السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Sorry for being late. Hopefully inshallah ta'ala we can cover as much as we can inshallah now and after Isha. So this is about Siyam and Ramadan, some of the ahkam, some of the rulings to be observed. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us witness the month of Ramadan and to make us among those who are guided and helped by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to establish what the month of Ramadan is for. So the part of the ahkam, the part of the fiqh ruling, this is something of course is going to be brief and it's not going to be in so much details of evidences and differences of opinions because of the time, just a way to go over the ahkam in a brief way so that we have the knowledge of it, and also we teach others, those who are close to us, and to make sure that also everything that is being needed to be asked about is asked inshallah ta'ala, hopefully inshallah. So this session inshallah will be about the ahkam, the rulings, the fiqh rulings of as-siyam. And as we know that the word as-siyam is to withhold from something, and this is linguistically that you leave something, you abstain from something. And of course fasting or as-siyam in the fiqh perspective, it's basically abstaining from al-muftirat, al-imsaku min al-muftirat. But this imsak or withholding oneself from breaking the fast is ta'abbudan lillah. You do that as an act of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, it's imsak an ashya' makhsusa, from specific matters according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade us from eating or drinking, or the things that breaks the fast. That's why imsak an al-muftirat. Al-muftirat is the things that breaks the fast. So al-imsak an al-muftirat min tulu' al-fajr ila ghurub al-shams. This is what the definition of fasting is. Imsakun an al-muftirat, to withhold oneself, to abstain from al-muftirat. And al-muftirat are something that, of course, something that we have to know from tulu' al-fajr, from the beginning of the time of fajr till sunset, as the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah states. But this imsak, to make the definition complete, is ta'abbudan lillah. You do that as an act of worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if a disbeliever does the same thing, he's not fasting. And it's not called fasting. He's just abstaining from eating and drinking, and it breaks the fast. Or someone without intentions. That's why siyam is a ibadah. And of course the virtues of it and the importance of it is something that is well known, and it's one of the pillars of al-Islam. And it was made obligatory when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the ayah شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فمن شهد شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصمه. This is the ayah that made the siyam of Ramadan obligatory. The ayah يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون, which is before that ayah. O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed upon you the same way it's been prescribed on the nations before you, so that you would have and attain the taqwa of Allah. This is also shows the obligation, but the obligations of fasting the month of Ramadan is stated in the ayah of Shahr Ramadan, and it's one of the pillars of Al-Islam. With every ibadah, to be brief and to be able to remember things, we need to always ask about the arkan and the shurut, the conditions, and nawaqid. These words always we have to carry with us in all matters of ibadah. What are the pillars of fasting? What are the conditions of fasting? What negates the fast? What breaks the fast? You know, the same thing we do with the salah, with acts of ibadah. So the first thing, which is, even though the shurut oftentimes are mentioned before, but what are the pillars of fasting? And pillars, like the pillars of the salah, if one is missing, the ibadah is not valid. So every pillar has to be there. And there's no make up for the pillar if it's missed. Like exactly the pillars of the salah. If someone missed the ruku', he missed the rak'ah. And if he missed the rak'ah, the salah is not complete, the salah is not valid. He can fix it, but he has to do the rukn. There's no such a thing as do something at the end. This is with the arkan, of course. So arkan as-sawm, or the rukn that we heard in the definition, is to abstain from al-muftarat, al-imsaku min al-muftarat. It's all mentioned in the definition. We said basically two things. Or you can add the third thing, which is the time. The definition, we said what? Imsak, and we mentioned time. So imsak min al-muftarat, this is the abstaining away from what breaks the fast. And we talked about time, from Fajr till Maghrib, ta'abbudan lillah, that means the niyyah, with the niyyah. So these are the three pillars of the siyam, which is al-imsak an al-muftarat and al-niyyah. And you can talk about also, you can include the third one, as some of the ulama mentioned, which is the time, which is an obvious thing, from al-fajr till maghrib. These are pillars. And what does it mean by pillars? If someone says, I fasted, but he did not abstain from what breaks the fast, he's not fasting. Or fasted from dhuhr till maghrib, it doesn't qualify as fasting. He fasted without intentions. And we talk about the intention. I'll give you the example that we always mention here. And if someone slept, I always mention this example to make it clear. If someone slept before Maghrib and woke up after Fajr, right, for Fard Siyam, the Siyam of Al-Fard, because the Niyyah, one of the Masail of the Niyyah, do you have to have intentions in the night before? Right, so if someone woke up after Fajr and there was no part of the night whatsoever he was awake, that means he never had any intentions. He did not have a chance to make niyyah or intentions that he's fasting the next day, and the place of the niyyah is during the night, before the day. So for the opinion of that you have to have the niyyah of fasting every day, not just one intention in the beginning of the month of Ramadan, according to that opinion, that day has to be made up. Why? Because he did not make the intention during the night. He still have to abstain from al-muftarat because of Ramadan, but he has to make up this day. Why? Because there was no part of the night where he had to have any niyyah or intention. And of course, the niyyah, which is a condition or a pillar, it just maybe you would find differences of putting it where, but the same outcome is the same. You have to have the intention that it's ibadah for the sake of Allah, and that's the ikhlas, for the deed to be accepted, and the niyyah in which it makes the acts of adat or permissible matters, makes it ibadah. So again, as we said, if someone just doesn't feel like eating or drinking, and it happened that he did what the people fasting did, it doesn't count as fasting because he did not have the niyyah to make fasting. So a child is 5 years old or 4 years old, because 5, 6, 7, he understands what niyyah is, he knows what he's doing. But if someone that is younger than that does not aware of what he's doing, and it just happened that he didn't eat, he did not have the intentions of fasting, because he doesn't have the intellect for it. So anyway, so these are the three pillars of fasting. Before we get into the conditions, because since the niyyah is mentioned, you have the different types of fasting, whether it's fard or nafl, the same thing as the salah. And the fard of fasting is the month of Ramadan, and there's other types of fard, if it's a kaffara, if it's an expiation of an oath, for example, if it's a nadhr, a vow that a person has to fulfill, so it becomes obligatory upon the person. And the recommended fasting are so many different types, and we can talk about that later, inshallah ta'ala. Then after that is the next subject that we need to mention here. Let me see what I need to talk. So we talked about the pillar of fasting. Before we talk about the conditions also, we're still in the month of Sha'ban, and there is Yawm al-Shak, the day of Ash-Shak, or the day of the doubt, which is the 30th of Sha'ban. The 30th of Sha'ban is an important day because there's a hadith about it, there is opinions there. And the 30th of Sha'ban, either it's the first of Ramadan or the 30th of Sha'ban. So if there was ghaim, or people were not able to see the moon, and as a result of that, not that it was no clouds or anything, no, it was because it's cloudy, because of some external factors, they were not able to see the hilal. That means the hilal might have been in the skies, but they didn't see it, right? So what's the ruling here? The ruling is that Sha'ban is 30 days, because they didn't see the hilal. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Sumu liru'yatih," fast when you see it, meaning the hilal. They didn't see it because it was cloudy, for example. So then what do they do in the next day? The next day is the 30th of Sha'ban. This day, the ulama have two opinions in, whether it's to be fasted or it's not to be fasted, right? According to Madhab Imam Ahmad, they have to fast it. And this, in this case, to make sure that they do not miss anything in Ramadan. But there's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, "Man sama al-yawm alladhi yushakku fihi, faqad asa Aba al-Qasim." Whoever fasts the day that they are in doubt in, then he had disobeyed Aba al-Qasim, the hadith of Ammar ibn Yasir radiyallahu anhu. And there is also the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that فَأَكْمِلُوا عِدَّةَ شَعْبَانَ 30 يَوْمًا. So what is then the opinion here? This is, it's explained in that it's the ruling in the madhab for the people to fast it. It's because of, this is not considered to be the day of shak. Shak here, according to the explanation, it was not cloudy and they didn't see the hilal. So you have two situations here. It was not cloudy and people could see the hilal, but they didn't see the hilal. This is the next day is for sure Yawm al-Shak. It's not permissible to fast that day. The opinion of Ahmad, if it was cloudy, that's the condition here, then he does not consider that as the day of a shak, because they were not able to see the moon. But the majority of the ulama, and this is what has been the act is not to fast the day of the 30th of Sha'ban in this case, and to make Sha'ban 30 days. So you understand here the point here, which is also a good example to see that the hadith, all of them, they agree to the hadith, but interpreting the hadith differently, which is a valid thing, inshallah ta'ala. Plus the hadith, لا تقدموا رمضان بصوم يوم ولا يومين. The Prophet ﷺ said, do not fast a day or two before Ramadan. إلا رجل كان يصوم صوما فليصومه. Except a man that is used to fast certain fasting, his Mondays and Thursdays, he fasts every other day, then he can fast. Or someone did not make up the days of the previous Ramadan, then they can fast a day or two before Ramadan. Otherwise, this is something for a person, it's makruh for anyone to fast a day or two before the month of Ramadan, as the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And why it's makruh and not haram? Because the Prophet ﷺ made an exception. So the exception, then it shows that it's not in the level of something that is forbidden. But someone to initiate fasting when he has nothing whatsoever, no reason, this is something that a person should stay away from. So this is with regards to the 30th of Sha'ban, is again to stay away from fasting the day of Sha'ban, but to understand the difference of opinions there. What are the conditions of fasting? If you remember, there's two sets of conditions. There's shurut, they call it shurut wujub, and shurut sihha. Shurut wujub, that means conditions. If it's fulfilled, someone has these conditions, then it's wajib, obligatory upon that person to fast. And there's shurut sihha, which means conditions, if it's there, it's valid for the person to fast. If he fasts, it's valid fasting, but it's not obligatory necessary upon him. Right? So these are two sets of conditions. So shurutul wujub, if we talk about shurutul wujub, we have al-Islam. Of course, a person has to be a Muslim. Al-bulugh, to be in the age of puberty as shart wujub. So if someone is not in the age of puberty and he fasts, is the fasting accepted? Inshallah. The fast is sahih, is valid, but it's not wajib. It's not obligatory upon the person. So al-bulugh, which is the age of puberty. And you have also the third one is al-aql, which is someone that is sane. So if it's an insane person, it's not wajib upon him. If he fasts, the fast is sahih. And he gets rewards, his parents get reward. The same thing with the child. If he's below the age of puberty, he gets a reward, and also the parents, those who helped him to fast, gets a reward. And the fourth condition that the ulama mentioned for shart al-wujub, so al-Islam wal-bulugh wal-aql is repeated conditions for the ibadat, for it to be wajib, the salah and fasting. The fourth one here in fasting, that the person is able to fast, al-maqdira, the ability to fast. So if someone has the ability to fast, then fasting, of course, it's an obligation upon him. Right? And that's what also one of the shurut of as-sihha. If he does not have the ability to fast, but he fasted anyway, right? His fast is sahih, is valid. Maybe he's doing something wrong for himself, but as far as the ruling of the fasting itself, it's not that if he's not able to, then the fasting is not valid. He has to make up the day. So if someone is sick and he has the excuse to break his fast, someone is traveling and he has the excuse to break his fast, but he chooses to fast, right? What's the ruling here? The fast is valid. He does not, of course, have to make up that day because al-maqdira is shart wujub and not necessarily shart sah. Clear? So these are the four conditions to remember them, inshallah. Islam wal-aql wa-al-bulugh, or Islam al-bulugh wal-aql wa-al-qudra, means the ability to fast. Shurut al-sahha, as we heard here, is you have the shart of al-sahha, that means for the validity of fasting. An-niyyah, we talked about it as a pillar. And that's why some they say the niyyah is in the categories of al-shurut, not in the categories of pillars. So the outcome is the same, as we said. Doesn't matter whether you put it here, you put it there, you have to have niyyah anyway, right? But the niyyah here, so if a person has or fasted without a niyyah, then the fasting is not valid. It's not valid if he doesn't have the niyyah. And the niyyah is in the heart, so there's no words to be uttered, as we know. And all the deeds requires niyyah, of course, that it's not the niyyah of seeking rewards only, the niyyah that a person is fasting. And in the heart, of course, a person is fasting the month of Ramadan, for example, that he's not fasting an optional fasting. Can someone in the month of Ramadan, we talked about that, I'm not sure if we're doing Aqsam Mukhtasarat or something, that if someone in Ramadan and he has the excuse to break his fast, can he make an optional fasting? Someone is traveling, so he's not going to fast that day, right? But he has days of fasting from a kafara, for example, right? From an oath that he made. Can he make that fast in that day of Ramadan that he chooses to break because he has an excuse? Right? That shows the intentions. Right? So the intention is, someone would say, we are in Ramadan. Why would someone have a different intention than fasting the month of Ramadan? A person might have a different intention because it's valid for him to break his fast, for example. Right? So the point here is the niyyah, that has to be that as far as the validity of fasting. And this is where the niyyah, is it one niyyah before the beginning of the month, or it's every night there's a new intentions for the day to come? And this is also one of the valid differences of opinions. And it's not really shown as a significant thing in one's actions because the niyyah is in the heart. So you don't say anything anyway. So not like some people might think, oh, does that mean that I have to say every night, نويت أن أصوم اليوم التالي? There's no such a thing. And niyyah is in the heart. This is all bid'ah. It's innovation in the deen to speak out your niyyah. because the niyyah is in the heart. And if you say something and your heart is upon something else, then what's in the heart is counts. So in this case, it's only that shows the difference is the example that we mentioned. Someone slept before Maghrib and woke up after Fajr. And also if a person had already intended the night before in a particular day that he's not fasting the next day. He's already traveler, right? He's on the road and it's close to Fajr. No intentions to fast, right? So then after Fajr, after the time of Fajr entered, he wants to change his mind. Too late. Because he did not have the niyyah for the fard. We're talking about the fard fasting. Optional fasting, it's okay, as long as he didn't eat anything. But for the fard, it has to be during the night. So, but here in this case, for both opinions, his fasting is not valid. He has to make up the day. Because even if the niyyah was sufficient in the beginning of the month, but this person, he broke that intention for that particular day. He does not have any intentions to fast the next day. And no conversation, no talks, whatever, just a decision that a person made. That's why a person should stay away from such pre-decisions, especially in Ramadan, especially for those who travel, for example. So if you know that you have a flight the next day at 12 o'clock at noon, for example, right? Don't have the intention. It's permissible for you to break your fast, but after you depart, after you leave, or if the airport is outside of your city. Once you depart from your city that you live in, then it's permissible for you to break your fast. But what if the plane delayed? What if the plans changed? So therefore, do not make that intention. It's only a conditional one to yourself. You're not saying anything to yourself. No plans, nothing whatsoever. It's just don't make a decision that I'm breaking my fast tomorrow. Is it permissible for a person to eat before he goes to the airport in his locality? No, it's not permissible because he's not a traveler yet. He has to be in the state of, he's called a traveler then, which that means he has to depart from his town or so. So this is which with regards to the niyyah of fasting. And inshallah ta'ala, the correct opinion that the niyyah is needed every night in Ramadan. And that has to be during the night. During the night. And again, you don't say anything, you don't focus upon anything. It's just the fact that you're awake during the night of Ramadan, you already know what you're doing the next day, which is the next day is Ramadan, you're fasting. For those who are not able to fast, this becomes a questionable thing. Someone not sure, should he fast or shouldn't he fast because of sickness or so, and that's why it shows the importance of the niyyah during the night. And this is the majority of the ulama, by the way. Actually, it's only the, if I remember correctly, is the Malikis are the ones that don't require the niyyah every night in Ramadan. So the Siyam al-Tatawwa, optional fasting, you don't have to have the niyyah during the night. You can make the niyyah during the day as long as a person doesn't eat or drink or do anything that breaks the fast. But the ulama, they said it till the middle of the day, because after that, that means most of the day has been passed without having the intention. So a person has till dhuhr time to make up his mind, but he does not get the reward of fasting, does not start till his intentions is fasting. So he's wasting time. He should do it as soon as he can, because he's not fasting till he makes the intention of fasting. So the first condition of shart al-sihha, of fasting, is a niyyah, that the niyyah is required for the person for fasting to be valid. The second one is, as a condition, al-tahara, or purification from al-hayd wal-nufas, the purification from the monthly menses and the afterbirth bleeding. So the woman that she has her menses, she has to be pure and no more blood before she would, of course, start the fasting. So if she was purified after Adhan of Fajr by an hour, then that day has to be made up, because it has to be before the time of Fajr starts. Does it have to be before she takes her shower? No, as long as the blood is stopped, and with the sign of the stopping of the blood, which is known in the subject of al-hayd. So this is a condition of sihha. This is a condition of validity. Of course, if If she's still having the blood of the menses, then the sawm, the fasting is not valid. If it happened a minute before sunset, then she has to make up that day. Rewards and things like this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. So she gets the rewards, inshallah ta'ala, even if she is in her menses and she's not fasting. And does she lose the reward of fasting? Of course not, because the one that commanded her not to fast is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's in the hearts. So the rewards are something else. But this is as far as the rulings, and she has to make up the days. And when Aisha radiallahu anha, and this athar that we always have to remember to show the way of life, so that a person is upon the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, when she was asked a question that anyone, if he asked nowadays these types of questions, people don't find any problem in the question, and they would give an answer, and they would try to talk about the philosophy behind it and the wisdom behind it. But the answer of Aisha radiallahu anha was different. And this type of answering should be given clearly, because it's not about what a person is asked about, it's about installing the proper understanding of the deen and conveying the haqq. She was asked, ما بال النساء, why the women in their menses, they're commanded, they make up the fasting, but they don't make up the salah. A woman asked a valid question. Why do we make up the days of fasting and we don't make up the days of salah? The woman in her menses, she does not make up the salah. The answer, if someone asks nowadays, what he's going to say? Oh, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful, made it easy for women because the salawat are so many, so to make up these many days becomes difficult. No, she said what? What's the answer? Kunna nu'mar. We used to be commanded, meaning at the time of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, to make up naqdi, and naqdi ayam Ramadan, to make up the days of Ramadan, and we are commanded not to make up the days of fasting, of salah. It's kunna nu'mar. We have been commanded. That's the end of it. This is wahy from Allah, which is more stronger also, not just in the hearts of the believers, to a disbeliever that is asking this question. Which is stronger to a disbeliever that is even, you want to give a da'wah to. Is it stronger to say this is wahy from Allah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed wahy from the creator of the heavens and the earth for us to do the ibadah like this? Or it's because of fasting, you can make up the days because it's easier, because of, which is stronger even? What kind of da'wah if you don't give the da'wah to embrace the wahy? The da'wah is about what? Is to be a follower of the revelation from Allah. The fact even that people are called to the tawheed, is it a decision that people made? No, it's calling them to the tawheed that Allah commanded us to be upon from the wahy from Allah. So it's wahy from Allah. And the messengers of Allah, when they were sent to their people, they said, we have been given the wahy to command you to worship none but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So anyway, so this is with regards to shurut as-sihha. So the niyyah and the tahara from al-hayd wal nafas, and the 4 conditions of wujub. What are the 4 conditions of wujub? Anyone to review it? Huh? Al-Islam wal-aql. Our Islam, we said al-bulugh wal-aql, and the 4th one, al-qudra, the ability. This is the conditions of obligation. And the shurut of as-sihha, we have the niyyah, and we have the purification from the menses and the afterbirth bleeding. So we'll stop here, inshallah ta'ala, before Salatul Isha, and then after Salatul Isha, inshallah ta'ala, we'll continue. We said to 9:30, right? So inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. And I was the one that was late, so inshallah we'll have some time, inshallah, after Salatul Isha. بارك الله فيكم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وصحبه وسلم. Inshallah, continue after the adhan, after the salah. We prayed 7:15, so after the salah, inshallah. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وصحبه وسلم.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue inshallah ta'ala with the ahkam of fasting. And before we continue, ta'allum, to learn ahkam as-siyam is mandatory. And this is the case with any ibadah that a person, it's an obligatory thing upon him that he has to know how to do it. So if someone wants to make salah, then he has to learn how to make salah. If a person is going to fast, then he has to learn how to fast. And if there are details with regards to the ahkam and the fiqh matters of fasting, either he learns it or he asks the people of knowledge. But there's no excuse for someone to not to know how to fast, and then the month of Ramadan starts and all of a sudden he's not really sure what to go about when it comes to fasting. So learning the ahkam of the fasting, this is a good deed. This is also something that the ulama have been upon, which is, the fiqh of al-munasabat. Munasabat, that means you have Ramadan is approaching, so you learn the ahkam of Ramadan. This is part of exalting the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're going for Hajj, so you spend some time before you go for Hajj to learn how to make Hajj, like this. So this is all part of the Sharia, part of the deen for the person to show the concern. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us benefit, inshallah ta'ala, from what we hear. Just before the salah, we were talking about the shurut. We talked about the pillars of fasting and the shurut of fasting. And the pillars of fasting are 3 pillars. The first one is al-imsak an al-muftarat, to abstain from what breaks the fast. And the details of that is to be known. The second pillar, which means it has to be done, of course, that is from the time of Fajr till Maghrib, so it refers to the time of fasting, so it's from the break of dawn to sunset. And the third pillar of fasting, that it's ta'abbudan lillah, that this is an act of worship, so the intentions or the niyyah is mentioned there for the fast to be, of course, considered to be fasting. And with the shurut, we talked about shurut wujub and shurut sihha, and shurut al-wujub, for the shurut, for the conditions for fasting to be an obligatory thing upon a person. It's al-Islam, al-bulugh, al-aql, al-qudra. Al-Islam, to be a Muslim, to reach the age of puberty, that means it's an obligation upon the person to fast. Is the aql, a person is sane, and a person has the ability. And the ability, whether he's healthy or also can come with this, is that he's residing in his locality, because traveling is an excuse, right? So if someone is traveling and he breaks his fast, it's not obligatory upon him, right? So this is shurutul wujub. Shurutul sihha, we mentioned the niyyah, the intention, as a person intended to fast the month of Ramadan. Niyyah is done by the heart. There's no words to be said. There's no silence for a few minutes for a person or a few seconds to decide. There's no such a thing. It's already in the heart. A person knows what he's doing the next day. And we talked about some of the examples there. And the purification from the blood of menses and afterbirth bleeding for women. That doesn't mean that these are the only 2 shurut sahha. Assuming, of course, that we know that the shurut al-wujub also is part of shurut al-sahha. Al-Islam is shart al-sahha. So you want to add this also to make sure. Al-Islam, to be a Muslim, it's shart al-sahha and shart al-wujub in both sides. When a person is a Muslim, it's an obligatory thing upon him to fast. If a person is a Muslim, it's a validity condition for the fasting to be accepted. Because if he's not a Muslim, his fasting is not accepted unless he's a Muslim. The same thing with al-aql. Al-aql is shart sihha and shart wujub. For a person to be sane, the fasting is valid. Otherwise, it's a validity condition. Al-bulugh, it's what? The age of puberty. To make sure that we understand what the difference between shurut al-wujub and shurut al-sahha. Is the age of puberty shart sahha or shart wujub? Or both? Shart wujub. You see, this is one of the things that makes it different or clear between both. The age of puberty is shart wujub. That means if someone reached the age of puberty, he has to fast. Right? This is wajib upon him. But is it shart صحة? Is it a condition of the validity of fasting that a person reach the age of puberty? No, because a child can fast and his fast is valid. So he doesn't have to be in the age of puberty for the fasting to be valid. So 7 years old, if he fasts, mashallah, his fast is valid, is accepted, he's rewarded for it, his parents are rewarded for it. But it's not wajib, it's not obligatory upon him. But it's obligatory upon the parents to make sure that if their children are able to fast, then they would train them to fast and not to wait till they reach the age of puberty, as the Sahaba radiallahu anhum would make sure that their children also fast. And if they ask for food, they make them busy with things to distract them. Of course, as long as it's not harmful for them. So this is what we covered so far. And we talked about the day of Ash-Shak, the 30th of Sha'ban, and the difference between when there's no clouds versus when it's clouds. And it's to avoid fasting that day. And 2 days before Ramadan also to avoid fasting. 2 days before Ramadan, as the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, unless a person has the habit of fasting and it's a continuous one, or making up the days from the previous Ramadan, for example. And then some of the ahkam when it comes to starting the month of Ramadan. We talked about it last night, but just briefly. The ulama, they mentioned about the ahkam of dukhul Ramadan. When or what constitutes the beginning of the month of Ramadan is with the ru'ya, with seeing the hilal, the crescent, the moon of Ramadan. And also the month of Ramadan starts with the completion of 30 days of Sha'ban. So if Sha'ban becomes 30 days, do we have to go look for the moon? No, because the month cannot be 31. So it's only 30 or 29. So either 30 days of Sha'ban, or the people saw the moon the night of the 30th, which is after the end of the day of the 29th of Sha'ban. And to make it clear again, we talked about it yesterday, and also to make it clear, and it's the yearly subject that always have to be repeated. The ru'ya with the eyes, this is what counts for the beginning of the month. Seeing the hilal, the moon with the eyes, this is what counts for the beginning of the month. Therefore, calculations are not valid, are not part of the deen whatsoever. Something that is of no significance. It's just something that people made up. It has no value to it in the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is how things are, because the Prophet ﷺ, he said it clearly in the hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari rahimahullah, نحن أمة أمية لا نكتب ولا نحسب الشهر هكذا وهكذا. We are illiterate ummah, we do not write and we do not count. The month is like this or like this, 29 or 30. And ummatun ummiyya la naktub wa nahsub, this is not in general terms. This does not mean that it's a good thing for the ummah to be illiterate, doesn't write or calculate. This is specifically for the beginning of the month of Ramadan. This is khas with the context. So for the beginning of the month of Ramadan, we don't write and we don't calculate. We just go by seeing the hilal. Sumu li ru'yati. Fast when you see it, break your fast when you don't see it. All of the other arguments that people have, it's basically away from the wahy, revelation from Allah. This is wahy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whoever claim that there are statements from some of the ulama in the past, as the ulama they say, it's all aqwal shadha. It's abnormal statements. It does not fit with the deen. One or two or something like this has no validity to it. Not anyone that comes up with an opinion that means it's something that we can rely upon. So this is very clear, especially again that the hadith is very clear in this. And therefore, whoever already decided when is the beginning of the month of Ramadan based on calculations, there is not permissible to follow such a thing. It is not permissible to follow such a thing whatsoever. This is against the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the subject of the witness, for the beginning of the month, one witness is sufficient. Because the Prophet ﷺ is the hadith of Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, he says, أنه أجاز شهادة رجل. The Prophet ﷺ permitted the shahada, the witness of one man, for seeing the hilal for the beginning of the month. But al-iftar, meaning at the end of the month, the Prophet ﷺ would not approve the witness of one, the witness of two. Right? So that's why when people are fasting, to get them not to fast at the end, that requires two. But in the beginning, it requires only one. And this doesn't matter whether it's men or women, or it doesn't matter. But so it has to be valid witness of the hilal. And of course, for the 30 days of Sha'ban to be established. So this with regards to that. The issue of al-mutala', which is something that is always mentioned, this is a valid thing. It's a valid thing that people might have different ru'ya in different places, because there's a subject that makes it clear, again, when it comes to the, especially in the West. The ulama talked about, is it a condition for the hakim, for the ruler, to establish the beginning of the month, otherwise it's not for the people, each one to make their own decision. It's a debatable issue, because this has been the case. Right? If you're in a Muslim country, they come with the decision, tomorrow is Ramadan, everybody fast. The Hilal has been cited and tomorrow is Ramadan. Everybody under that rule, they would fast, and that's the normal thing. When people do not have such an authority, this is where it caused a little bit of chaos or maybe confusion. So what should they do then? They should refer to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Either they do local citing, that's fine, or they go by the global citing, which is fine. But jumhur ulama, the majority of the ulama from the past, upon the global citing, if it's correct to say global citing, that means لا عبرة باختلاف المطالع. If the hilal is seen in one place, then it's upon the entire ummah to fast, especially if they share a part of the night. And this is the opinion of Al-Ahnaf and the Malikis and the Hanbalis, right? So this is the majority when it comes to this. But if someone takes the other opinion, as far as the validity in the deen, it's okay. It's not bid'ah, it's not haram, and it's not a cause of disunity. That's fine. You know, it's no big deal, as they say. So this is as far as the rulings are concerned. After that is, without going into the too much discussion in this subject, we talked about the periods and the conditions. If we talk about the mustahabbat, or the recommended acts of fasting, before we talk about what breaks the fasting, just briefly, and we list them and we can discuss them and we can go through them later also, inshallah ta'ala. As-suhoor is one of which, if you start from the beginning, you have as-suhoor is one of the recommended things, and every time we say recommended or mustahab or masnoon is because we have wahy in the subject. We have revelation, we have Quran, we have Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and that's what we follow and that's what we hold fast to. Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Tasahharu, فَإِنَّ فِي السَّحُورِ بَرَكَةً." Have suhoor, have the meal of the suhoor, because there's barakah in it. So, and the suhoor comes from the word as-sahar, which is the last part of the night. So this is the perfect time to eat right before Fajr, before the time of Fajr starts. Al-Fajr al-Sadiq, of course, the Fajr that makes fasting starts, which is the true Fajr. And there are many hadith in the subject, and anything, even if a person doesn't find anything, you know, he can take, just drink water. And ni'ma suhoor, tamr, the best, of course, tamr is the best for a person if he wants to be helped during the day. So as-suhoor is from the sunnah, delaying it is from the sunnah. So even if you eat before you go to sleep in the early part of the night, this is suhoor. But it's better to make it later. So it's not only if it's before Fajr. Some people think they don't consider themselves having suhoor if they eat at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night. No, it's still suhoor. Right? But it's best to be delayed. And this is the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that ما زال الناس بخير. People are continuing to be good. ما عجلوا الفطرة وأخروا السحور. As long as they make the fitr immediately right after adhan, and this we have no problem in applying this mustahab, mashallah, everybody breaks the fast immediately, but also to delay the suhoor as much as they can. And the Prophet ﷺ, the time when Anas radiallahu anhu and Zayd ibn Thabit, they both made suhoor, and once the Prophet ﷺ and Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu, they made suhoor. So when they finished their suhoor, this is what Anas radiallahu anhu was saying this, when they finished their suhoor, they got up to the salah. So they asked Anas radiallahu anhu how much the time was between finishing their suhoor till they started the salah, meaning Salatul Fajr. They went to the masjid and started the salah. He says, كَقَدْرِ مَا يَقْرَأُ الرَّجُلُ 50 آية is the time where a man would recite 50 verses. That means it was very close to the time of Fajr, right before the adhan of Al-Fajr. And this is what the ayah says, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَكُمُ الْخَيْطُ الْأَبْيَضُ مِنَ الْخَيْطِ الْأَسْوَدِ مِنَ الْفَجْرِ. So delaying suhoor till right before Fajr, this is a good thing and it's recommended act to be done. تعجيل الفطر, as we said, not to delay the fitr. Once the sun sets, then a person breaks his fast. People say, do I have to hear the adhan? You know, the adhan means what? إعلام بدخول الوقت. The adhan means this is the announcement of the beginning of the time. So if the muadhin is not making adhan and the time started, then you break your fast. Right? So if, for example, in the masjid you're sitting and you're waiting for the adhan and the time started, and the people are waiting for the muadhin, they should not wait. But I'm just saying for the sake of the example. Should people eat or they should wait for Allahu Akbar to be announced in the adhan? No, they should eat. If they're sure that the adhan is, meaning the time of the maghrib starts. So it's about qurs al-shams. It's about the sun disk. If it disappears, that means now the fasting started, as the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. If someone makes a mistake, you know, the Asma radiallahu anha, in the hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, she said, أفطرنا على عهد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يوم غيم ثم طلعت الشمس. One day to show how they would break their fast right away. We broke our fast in the time of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, and it was cloudy. Then the sun rises, risen afterwards. Right? So that means what? They broke their fast before the sunset. So, and this is, of course, you know, they make up the day. But it's okay. I mean, for people, it shows that how a person should not wait. Oh, we have to make sure, and we think that this is a matter of piety. Of course, we have to make sure that the sun set. But sometimes people, they would make sure that means it's time for Isha or close to time of Isha. And this is the way of the bid'ah. Like Rafida, for example, they do that. So ta'jeel al-fitr. From the recommended acts is for a person to break his fast on rutab, the fresh dates. If not, then it's tamr. You don't like tamr, that's fine. You don't have to force yourself. But it's good to even at least one or half or something. And the reason why we say that, it's not because tamr is the food in Arabia and that's what happened, and the Prophet ﷺ, he would not go against the norm of his people. This is fine unless the Prophet ﷺ would say something. So if he said something, then it becomes deen. Right? So this is where we get to know the differences or the line between cultures versus deen. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ, he used to break his fast on rutab, and if he doesn't find, then it's tamr, and rutab is the fresh ones. If it's not, then it's tamr. If not, then he would hasawatim min ma. He would take some sips of water. So if there's no dates, then you take some sips of water. And the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا أَفْطَرَ أَحَدُكُمْ فَلْيُفْطِرْ عَلَى تَمْرٍ. If one of you breaks his fast, let him break his fast on tamr. So this is what he said, ﷺ. فَإِن لَمْ يَجِدْ فَلْيُفْطِرْ عَلَى الْمَاءِ فَإِنَّهُ طَهُورٌ. If he doesn't find the tamr, then let him break his fast on water. Because it's tahur, it's pure. So not to break the fast on the heavy dishes right away, and the biryani no, it start with something light on the stomach and tamr. If not, then it's water and things like this. Dua, which is at the time of breaking the fast, is masnoon also, as some of the narrations, where the hadith of Ibn Umar, many things are weak and not authentic. One of the narrations is Hasan, where the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he would break his fast, he would say, ذهب الظمأ وابتلت العروق وثبت الأجر إن شاء الله, which means the thirst went away, وابتلت العروق, and the veins are fresh, وثبت الأجر إن شاء الله, and the ajr is established إن شاء الله تعالى. So this is some of the recommended acts of fasting. And anything for it to be recommended, it has to be clearly with evidence in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Some of the things that are disliked in fasting, we're going closer to what negates fasting, but the things that are makruh, that means if a person leaves it, he gets rewards. If he does it, he does not get a sin or he does not break his fast. One of which is al-mubalagha, or to make madmada wal istinshaq in an extensive way, in an extreme way. The norm is when you make wudu, you make the madmada and istinshaq, the mouth and the nose, vigorously with lots of water, not extreme of course, not excessiveness, but you move the water in your mouth back and forth. So you put water in the mouth. It is not valid for someone making wudu to wipe over his lips, for example. And when a person is fasting, he should not wipe over his lips like this. No, he has to put water inside, and he has to spit the water out, but not too much water. That makes it easy for the water to be swallowed. But small amount of water, and he still move it in his mouth and he spit it. And not to be extreme on oneself, that a person would spend minutes in the bathroom trying to spit the effect of water from his mouth. No, just to be at ease with the matter. I mean, particles, if you put it under the microscopic level, is anything went inside? Of course. But that's nothing. It's the deen is not based on this level of extreme behavior, right? So to be at ease with oneself, a person, of course, he's not intentionally drinking anything, he's not loose in the matter, and that's the command of the Prophet ﷺ, وَبَالِغْ فِي الْإِسْتِنْشَاقِ إِلَّا أَن تَكُونَ صَائِمًا. Baligh, that means al-mubalagha is to do more. So make a full good istinshaq with the nose and also with the madmada, إِلَّا أَن تَكُونَ صَائِمًا, unless you're fasting. So you still do madmada and istinshaq, but don't make mubalagha, do not be extreme in it. As we know that one of the things that breaks the fasting is the desire that would lead the person to extract something that is not, breaks the fast, like semen and things like that. So it's what comes before that, it's to be avoided. The shahwa, this is as the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the hadith Qudsi, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the person, as-sawmu li wa ana ajzi bih. ترك طعامه وشهوته من أجلي. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, as-sawmu li, fasting is for me, and I reward to the person from me. That means the reward is unlimited of fasting. And the hadith says, because he left his food and his shahwa, and his desire for me, for the sake of Allah. So it is not about the actual things that breaks the fast, which is the seminal fluid or the semen, but it's the actual shahwa for a person to stay away from it. Doing the act of intimacy during the day of Ramadan, a person has to stay away from it, because that's what fasting is all about, in controlling oneself in the month of Ramadan during the day. But if things happens of interaction without the desire being or intimacy is there, this is fine. As the Prophet ﷺ used to kiss his wives and he goes to the salah. And this is not some people, they become at ease with these types of, unease with these matters. This is all preserved for a reason. The Prophet ﷺ, the best man ever walked on the face of earth, and he says, I'm a slave of Allah. He's not anything but a human being, but the best of all of the human beings. And he would do that, alayhi salatu wasalam, but not in Ramadan in a way as Aisha radiallahu anhu, that he kana amlakukum li irbi or li arabihi, that he was in control of himself, alayhi salatu wasalam. So if it's like a normal thing, this is fine, but it's better to avoid even, because of a person might not be able to control himself. And that's anything that would lead to this. And that's why we have to be careful, with these things that we have been tested with in our life, with the phones and internet and things like this, what a person sees while fasting and without fasting, and at all times we are commanded to lower our gaze. So during fasting, maybe sometimes a person has to lower his gaze from the halal, from what Allah permitted for him, because he's fasting. So you can imagine then if it's haram. So, and part of the fasting is to have the taqwa of Allah, to have the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So anything that can lead the person to break the fast or makes him closer to it, even though he did not break his fast, then it becomes in the categories of the makruh. Even tasting the food. It's permissible for someone that is cooking lots of food and he doesn't want to ruin it and put so much salt or whatever, to taste it, to put it on the tip of the tongue without swallowing anything, but it's best to avoid it if he can or if she can avoid it. not to be at ease with it. So that's why it can be considered from what is makruh and what is disliked. Sometimes, when you're children, people sometimes they come next to the food before iftar, they start sniffing the food so much. This is something to avoid, for example, or to make it closer to oneself. Of course, if it's an adult, it's something that a person should stay away from this. Al-bukhur is to be avoided in fasting because it has jurm, it has a physical thing to it. So a person can find the taste of it in his throat. So the bukhur, the scent, should be avoided in the days of Ramadan because of this. As-siwak is not makruh. Using the siwak during fasting is not makruh, whether it's in the morning or before breaking the fast. And of course, siwak has a strong taste to it if it's fresh. But the Prophet ﷺ used to use the siwak in Ramadan during fasting and in other than Ramadan. The flavored ones, I think they're not that much anymore. This is to be avoided. If it has a lemon flavor or something like this, to be avoided. Toothpaste, as the ulama, they say it's better to avoid it, and if you use the siwak, it's better. But it doesn't break the fasting by itself. But it has a strong taste, so if a person is able to avoid it, it's better, but no one can say that it breaks the fast by just saying it like this. And again, anything that would get the person to be closer to breaking the fast. Now, what breaks the fast? Mufsidat, as-sawm. What is basically al-muftirat? Al-muftirat is food and drink, which is an obvious thing. Any food, anything that goes through the halq, through the normal passage of food, whether it's food or not, intentionally, not by mistake. Whether it's something that is benefiting for the person or it's not benefiting with the person. Medicine or food or anything that goes through the normal passage of food and drink, that breaks the fast. Whether he has an excuse or not. If a person is sick and he has to take a medicine, take the medicine because you're sick, and you make up the day because you have a valid excuse. But not to say, well, it's not food. No, it doesn't matter. Anything goes through the passage of food. Medicine is only permissible, does not break the fast if it's injected. So if someone takes a shot and it's not nutritional and it's medicine while fasting, as the ulama, they say that doesn't break the fast because it's not through the normal passage of food and drinking. And it's not food, it's not nutrition in itself. So if it's a vitamin or something that is nutritional, that breaks the fast, even if it's an injection. And that's why, for example, insulin, in principle, I'm not saying that the person taking insulin should fast or not, but insulin does not break the fast. If someone's taking shots of insulin, it does not break the fast. So food and drink from the passage of food. The second thing is, of course, al-jima', the relations between husband and wife, whether it's halal or haram. Even if someone did wal'iyadu billah, a sin, it breaks the fast, regardless of what the sin that a person is doing. And the same thing with al-mani, and there's no shyness in matters of religion. For the semen, if it comes out intentionally, that breaks the fast during the day of Ramadan. If it comes out unintentional, there is details to this. That's why a person should stay away from getting himself closer to this. If it's during sleep, which is al-ihtilam, it does not break the fast. So if someone slept during the day and he woke up and he has to take a shower because of al-ihtilam, that does not break his fast. But if it's intentional or as a result of seeing something, he didn't do anything, but he committed a sin by seeing, or not committing a sin, even if it's halal, right? But as a result of that, something came out that breaks the fast. Because this is, even though he did not intend to do that, but he got himself into that stage where he has to make up the day. And of course, eating and drinking intentionally, as we said, the hijama has differences of opinions, and that's why a person should avoid al-hijama, especially in Ramadan during the day if he has to make hijama, with the details of this. So it's just to be away from it, unless a person is in need of it, for example, then inshallah it doesn't break the fast. Another thing that breaks the fast, vomiting intentionally. If someone intentionally vomit. So there's difference between someone vomit unintentionally, he's overpowered, that doesn't break the fast. but intentionally he vomited. Either a person intentionally, that means he wants to do something wrong. That, of course, is an obvious one, but he needs to because he swallowed something bad, for example. So he wants to vomit. Okay, then in that case, it's permissible for him to do that, but he has to make up the day because he intentionally vomited. Of course, what breaks also the blood of menses and after birth bleeding, that breaks the fast, even if it's a minute before sunset. The day has to be made up, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. Some of the things where it's, since it's a contemporary matters, using eye drops, nose drops, these types of things. When we talk about the obligatory fasting, it's best to avoid these types of things. But if a person has to use it, right, and he do the best he can that it doesn't get swallowed, then his fasting is valid. What if he has to use it and he puts what is sufficient and he finds the taste of it in his throat? According to the opinion of the ulama, is that he's taken the means and it's something that is against his will, he's not willing or being at ease with it. It doesn't break the fast, inshallah ta'ala. It's part of having a mistake, especially that if he is in need of it. But if he does not need it, then of course he has to wait. And that's why the subject of the one has an asthma and they use the inhaler or something like that. This is by itself does not break the fast because it doesn't go to the stomach. So if it's only to the chest, then there's no harm and it's not food and drink and it's not in the meaning of it. But also if a person is able to avoid it, mashallah, this is what is best. As we said, any kind of shots as medicine or anything like this, it does not break the fast unless it's nutritional. There are so many details, of course, in these matters. When people go to the dentist, right? Going to the dentist does not break the fast when you enter the office, inshallah. Does not break the fast. If a person gets anesthesia, doesn't break the fast. If a person goes to the dentist with whatever work, the work by itself does not break the fast. And if a person is spitting as much as they can, or they make sure that they take the whatever they put in there, then all of that does not break the fast. If something by mistake slipped inside, it does not break the fast because it's a mistake. Can a person, if it's not emergency, can he avoid it? Mashallah, it's part of avoiding these types of things, but it does not break the fast if someone does this or goes to the dentist. And one of the obvious ones, swallowing your own saliva does not break the fast, right, which is a very obvious one. Can someone donate blood while fasting? This has the same ruling of al-hijama. In principle, it doesn't, even though it has differences of opinions. But if it makes the person weak, and as a result of that he has to drink something or eat something, then of course he breaks his fast. So that's why he should avoid, if it's avoidable, during the day of Ramadan, to donate blood. But taking sample blood for test, it does not break the fast. So if you do lab work, it doesn't break the fast whatsoever, inshallah. Since this is something that is listed because people, I guess, as these types of things, swimming like that, it doesn't, taking showers, all that does not break the fast because again, it's not something that goes inside of the mouth or the throat as a result of swimming. So this is some of the things that breaks the fast. Going back to some of the etiquettes to be observed, when the month of the Ramadan starts, no, bleeding doesn't break the fast. Right, so bleeding does not break the fast, but again, if someone bleeds so much that makes him weak and he has to eat something or drink something, what breaks the fast is the fact that he ate something, not the fact that he is bleeding breaks the fast. No. The learning, taking a break from the ahkam a little bit, inshallah, learning the fada'il, the virtues of Ramadan, something that it's important to remind ourselves and not just to wait for it to be mentioned in the masajid, but it's good to read the hadith in Riyadh Salihin, something like this, to reflect upon these meanings, to do that among our families, to prepare them and to prepare their hearts for seeking the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to have these meanings present in the heart. This is something that is important, inshallah ta'ala, so that the person get the best of the rewards of fasting. One of the things, I'm saying now some points without a specific order. I'm just anything that I was trying to remember or taking some notes from before, just comes up. There's no authenticity of any multiplication of the rewards of the fard or the nafl in Ramadan. So the salah is multiplied by 70 and all of these things. There's no authentication of this whatsoever. But there's general understanding that if the time is an honorable time, a virtue, a time of virtue, then the good deeds are multiplied. This is already known. So if you are in Ramadan, it's by default the good deeds are multiplied. If you are in Mecca, in the Haram, the rewards are multiplied. So time, places, but this is, when people say the fard is equal to 70, there's no authenticity to this whatsoever. And that's why the hasana, or the reward, can be multiplied because of the time and because of the individual. The person, when he's righteous, when he's pious, the rewards also are multiplied for such a person. And staying away from the haram makes the good deeds also multiplied. As the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, مَنْ لَمْ يَدَعْ قَوْلَ الزُّورِ وَالْعَمَلْ بِهِ وَالْجَهْلِ فَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ حَاجَةٌ فِي أَنْ يَدَعْ طَعَامَهُ وَشَرَابَهُ. That means what is the objective of fasting? It's for the person لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, to be upon the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, whoever doesn't abandon qawl al-zur, the false speech and lying and acting upon it, and to be ignorant, there is no need, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in no need for him to abstain from his food and drink. It doesn't mean that if someone lies or commit a sin in the day of Ramadan, that means his fasting is broken and he has to make up the day. No. So that's not from the mufsidat of, or what negates fasting. So if someone backbited someone during the day of Ramadan, the sin is multiplied. It's something that is shameful for someone fasting to do something like this. But does it invalidate his fasting? No. And it doesn't mean that to belittle these matters. Sometimes it's best for someone that thinks that it breaks his fast not to tell him, so that he does not take this as an excuse to backbite people. But it does not break the fast, of course. And the same thing with matters of sins, because the fasting person is different than someone that is not fasting. And the evidence of that is the hadith. وَإِن قَتَلَهُ أَحَدْ أَوْ شَاتَمَهُ فَلْيَقُلْ إِنِّي امْرُؤٌ صَائِمٌ. If someone try to fight with him or revile him, say bad words to him, he should reply by saying, إِنِّي امْرُؤٌ صَائِمٌ. I'm a fasting person. I'm not into fighting at this moment. Maybe after Maghrib, but not now. Right? Something like this. Or I'm not going to exchange words with you. You leave him. You say, إِنِّي امْرُؤٌ صَائِمٌ. I'm a fasting person. And is it something of riya, of showing off if someone says this? No, because the hadith says that. So you say, I'm fasting. So that means I'm staying away from these types of things. Also, we didn't talk about the qiyam yet, but since we will talk inshallah ta'ala about some of the rulings of al-qiyam, but I'm just going to give also some of the points here that needs to be observed. As we know that qiyam Ramadan, fasting or praying we don't want to talk about the qada at this moment, but Ramadan is fasting, and then you have the night prayer, you have it'am al-ta'am, feeding people. So Taraweeh or Al-Qiyam is, of course, something that is important, and a person should make sure that it's not missed. And you see the masajid, alhamdulillah, get filled with people making Salatul Qiyam. And knowing the hukm of it is very obvious that it's not fard. It's a recommended act, and it should never be missed. And there's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, مَنْ قَامَ رَمَضَانَ إِيمَانًا وَاحْتِسَابًا غُفِرَ لَهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِهِ. Whoever prays the night prayer in Ramadan, إِيمَانًا وَاحْتِسَابًا, believing in it and seeking rewards from Allah, his previous sins will be forgiven. And the reward is given when a person finishes all of the days. So not one day, not few days. Some people, they come the beginning of the Ramadan excited, and then the masajid becomes empty in the middle of Ramadan, then picks up again at the end of Ramadan. No, you have to make sure that it's the entire month to get the reward that is mentioned in the hadith, and to make sure that it's done, and it shows that it's also done in jama'ah, and it's not something that is initiated at the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, as people think, is the fact that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, من صلى مع إمامي حتى ينصرف كتب له قيام ليلة. Whoever prays with his imam till he finishes, it will be recorded for him as one night prayer. That hadith by itself shows what? That Qiyam Ramadan is in Jama'ah. من قام مع إمامه. Whoever prays the night prayer with his imam. حتى ينصرف till he finishes. Even if it's more than one imam are taking turns in the salah, it's about the position, not about the individual. So till the imam finishes the salah, then it will be recorded for that person as one night of Qiyamul Layl. And for the 29 or the 30 days of Ramadan, then he gets the reward at the end of the maghfirah of the sins. And of course, every night is a rewardable one. Also the issue that's always recurring every year, is it 11 rak'ah or 21 or 36, according to even Imam Malik, rahimahullah. The matter is easy, inshallah. It's not a disputable issue. People can pray as many numbers of rak'at as they can, and it's all according to what people be at ease with. So if someone might be at ease with making lots of ruku' and sujood, then pray many rak'at. If someone is not, then to pray less. But as far as the nusus are concerned, it's best if it's 11 rak'ah and longer rak'at. This is the best, the two combinations together. So if it's 21 rak'ah that a person would pray in 2 hours versus 11 rak'ah in 2 hours, which is better? The 11 rak'ah. Right? If it's 11 and 21, but the 11 is at the same time that you would pray the 21, that means you stood up in the salah longer than the one that prayed the 21 rak'ah. Because afdal al-qunut, afdal al-salat, tul al-qunut. The best of the night prayer is the long standing. And the 11 is because the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam كان يصلي 11 ركعة في رمضان وفي غير رمضان. كان لا يزيد. He did not used to make more rak'at than 11, whether it's in Ramadan or other than Ramadan. The entire year, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would pray 11 rak'ah. So this is his actions, alayhi salatu wasalam. To increase is not bid'ah, it's not innovation. This is an optional salah. So if someone wants to do more, no one is to stop that person. Salah during the night is a virtuous thing. And that's what, even with the masajid recognizing the needs of the people, and people cannot make a long salah and other things. So if, say for example, the masjid finishes after 2 hours and you have a long night, then, oh, I prayed 11 rak'ah, no more salah. No, if you find yourself that you want to make salah, make more salah. Make 2 rak'ah at home, 2 rak'ah after 2 rak'ah after 2 rak'ah. And then if you made witr, you don't make the witr again. 1 witr is sufficient for the night. But the thing is, a person should not stop himself from making salah. And it's not innovation in the deen. But again, the best is 11, but with the conditions that is not short rak'ah. And for those who say, for example, they pray in a masjid that prays 21 rak'ah and they leave after the 11, no, this is not the best choice for a person to do. It's not obligation anyway. But if it's best for them to stay with their imam till he finishes. Because man salla ma'a imami hatta yansarif. So this with that, inshallah ta'ala. Some people are they tend to be extremes. Those who would say, oh, the sunnah is 21. You guys are making bid'ah by making 11. This is how the opposite becomes, crazy in one statements like this. Or the other extreme, where people would say anything more than 11 is bid'ah. Both are wrong. It's not to just to make things close to another. No, this is based on the actions of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum and the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And the evidence for the validity of more than 11 is the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, Salatul Layl mathna mathna. He said that alayhi salatu wasalam. The night prayer is 2 rak'ah after 2 rak'ah. And he left it from the context, as the ulama, they say, The word mathna, it means without a qaid, without a limit. So that means 2 rak'ah after 2 rak'ah. You can make as many rak'at as you want. So that's why the time of the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, when they added more, because this was maybe easier for the people also. But the best is the 11 when it's long as we heard. طيب, there's many issues to be observed, but one of which is that a good thing for people to go to different masajid and to check the imams and the voices and things like this. This is not the proper way for a person to do things, but rather to go for the salah and not for the sounds, and not for checking every masjid and what they do and things like this, but rather to focus on the ibadah itself, inshallah. So when it comes to the qada, going back to some of the meanings here of the qada, is to make up the days that a person broke his fast in Ramadan. Breaking the fast in Ramadan, either intentional, wal'ayadhu billah, or it's with an excuse. If it's intentional, that means sinful, is that person should repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and make up the day, according to the majority of the ulama. Making up the day for such a person is not making up for the sin. What makes up for the sin is the tawbah, is the repentance. But he has to make up the day also. This is if what breaks the fast is eating and drinking. If breaking the fast is as a result of al-jima', intimate relations with one's wife, then in that case, he has to fast 60 days consecutively. So this is and of course to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from that action. But for the excuses, if someone has an excuse, whether it's sickness, traveling, and these excuses are mentioned in the Quran. وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَامٍ أُخَرَ. Whoever is sick or traveling, then counted other days to be made up these days. Sickness, it's obvious one. And what's the level of sickness? The sickness that fasting would harm the person as a result of fasting, or delays his cure, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, but according to what it's known to be. So whether it delays his cure or whether it's harmful, either or, that means a person has a valid excuse to break his fast. If he fasts, his fast is valid, but a person should not harm himself, and that's why there's different levels of this. And if a person is not sure, then to ask a doctor that is trusted in his religion and he knows the importance of fasting. Traveling is an excuse by itself, is not associated with tiredness or inconvenience or anything. So even if a person is traveling in business class, very easy, everything is nice, he has the excuse to break his fast just for the fact that he's traveling, but he has to make up the day. So then he see whatever is easier for him to do. And some said even because of the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, لَيْسَ مِنَ الْبِرِّ الصِّيَامُ فِي السَّفَرِ. It's not out of righteousness for a person to fast while traveling. So that means if someone thinks that if he fasts while traveling, this is more reward, no, it's not more reward. You would fast while traveling because it's more convenient. That's why you would fast. Because you don't want to make up the day, because everybody's around you is fasting, so it's not a problem. So because you have to make up the day, but not to think that this is one thing or the other is better. And sometimes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يحب أن تؤتى رخصه. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala love for the person to take the breaks, as He loved for you to take the azima. So not everything that have to do the best in your thinking. Sometimes the best is to take the rukhsa and to be at ease with it, and that's why it's a rukhsa. Making up the days of fasting that a person missed, it doesn't have to be immediately right after Ramadan. It can be delayed, but not till after the next Ramadan enters. It has to be done before the next Ramadan enters. The person is not able to, then he has to feed a poor person for every day that is missed till the next Ramadan enters. And especially for women, those who might break their fast because of pregnancy or because of breastfeeding, and they have these days to make up fast. If the next Ramadan enters, then to feed for every day to be on the safe side and still keep these days to make them also up, to be on the safe side, to be away from the differences of opinions, inshallah ta'ala. So the Jumhur, the majority of the ulama, are upon the opinion that it's not permissible to delay making up the days till the next Ramadan enters. And if a person does not have an excuse, then he should give the fidya, feeding a poor person for every day. And it doesn't have to be done consecutively, it can be done separate. No harm in this, inshallah. Also, if a person eats and drinks forgetfully, it doesn't break the fast, whether it's fard or nafl. So this is a very obvious one. إذا نسي فأكل وشرب فليتم صومه فإنما أطعمه الله وسقاه. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, if he forgets and he eats and drinks, let him complete his fasting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him food and made him drink. So anything that is done forgetfully, رفع أمتي الخطأ والنسيان ومستكره عليه. That my ummah is not held accountable for what it does by mistake or forgetfully. The things that by mistake enters into one's body from something flying in the air and went into his mouth and to his throat, it doesn't break the fast. And the like of these types of things. And the same thing with the blood and the like of that. So sickness is an excuse, and the different levels of that, and traveling also, and a person, for him to start breaking the fast is after he departs from his town and not before. So he has to wait till the city that he lives in becomes behind his back, then he can start breaking his fast while going for a traveling distance, of course. And the traveling, what constitutes traveling, is what makes the Salah Qasr, which is what's known to the people that a person is traveling. This is with fasting. Especially for Ramadan, that's a special ruling for Ramadan, because the fard of Ramadan and the hurma, the sanctuary of Ramadan, if someone has an excuse to break his fast and the excuse is finished, is to abstain from eating and drinking for the rest of the day. Not that it's for any reason, of course, he has to make up the day, but it's because of the importance, hurmat, the ulama, they talk about the hurma of Ramadan. For example, if someone embraces Islam during the day of Ramadan, does he have to make up that day? He embraces Islam in Salatul Asr. He became a Muslim in Salatul Asr in Ramadan, one of the days of Ramadan. Does he have to make up that day? No. The correct answer is no, Allahu A'lam. As the ulama, they say, why? Because he was not mukhatab, he was not addressed by this in the morning. So this day does not count for him. But unless he says, what is this is too difficult, he should abstain from eating and drinking till Maghrib. Not that he's going to make up the day, but now he is in Ramadan and he's a Muslim. If he's able to, then this is what should be done. Or the same thing with someone that was a traveler. A person is traveling and you're not fasting because you're traveling. And you arrived in your town in the middle of the day. So since you're not going to make Salah short, because now you're not a traveler, the same thing, a person should abstain from eating and drinking for the rest of the day, even though he's not fasting, but to observe the importance of Ramadan, because he's not a traveler anymore. So this is with that. We talked about the al-haml wal-rida'a, or pregnancy and breastfeeding, and there's qada as a result of this. And we talked about that before, that if a woman breaks her fast because either she's afraid for her own concern, for her own health, or the health of the child, or both, right? So if she's breaking the fast for the concern of herself and the child, then of course to break the fast. And if she's concerned about her own health, this is obvious that she has to make up the day. If there's no problem for the child, it's only for her own health, then she make up the day. So then she gets the ruling of as if a person is sick. Yes, there are opinions where they only feed and they do not make up the day, as you said. But it's best to keep it and to make up the days later on, inshallah ta'ala. And it's sufficient and they don't have to feed in this case. If the pregnant woman or the one that is breastfeeding, she's afraid or concerned about the health of the child, that she's not going to be able to breastfeed or for pregnancy, then she breaks the fast and also make up the day. But in this case, to feed for every day, and that is for the one that is the guardian of the child, he's the one that is responsible for feeding, because she broke her fast for him. She broke her fast for the child, not for her own self. And if she's afraid for concern of both, that means she makes up the day and also have the qada. So if the intention is the concern of the child, there's it'am, there is feeding in this case, and that is upon the guardian of the child, which is, for example, the father. This is just some of these examples. I would, some of the points that I wanted to mention here, inshallah, without a specific order. Al-Wusal, or combining 2 days in fasting, this is not permissible. This is something that was only permissible for the Prophet ﷺ, and he forbade the Ummah from doing such a thing. And the Wusal that is permissible, that means a person which is to eat something before the next day. So this is the mubah. As the Prophet ﷺ said, فَيُكُمْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يُوصِلْ فَلْيُوَاصِلْ فِي السَّحَرِ إِلَى السَّحَرِ. Whoever wants to do that, then he can do that till the sahar time, till right before Fajr, and he eats something. He chooses not to eat anything all the way to before Fajr. That means he did not even break his fast. Applying the other hadith, at least a sip of water, if he wants to do that. But is it something recommended? No, it's not recommended. But if someone wants to do that, that's up to him. If someone connect more than 1 day, it's not permissible, but the majority of the ulama, they say it's makruh. We're just saying that for the sake of making sure that it's clear. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِنِّي أَبِيتُ عِنْدَ رَبِّي يُطْعِمُنِي وَيُسْقِينِي. I spend the night with my Lord, he feeds me and he gives me drink, meaning that this is special for him, alayhi salatu wassalam. What else, inshallah? We talked about these things. Forgive me for just looking at some of the points here. Of course, the importance of the Quran in the month of Ramadan, and this is by al-isti'ana billah, seeking help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make the month of Ramadan for oneself the month where a person is into the Quran, reciting, reviewing, memorizing, whatever means that a person can have. This is the way of the early generations of Islam. And of course, there's ayat of the Quran, there's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and the actions of Salaf. It's very clear how their actions in the month of Ramadan with the Quran, and that's something that they took from the Prophet ﷺ. And they would be special thing for the month of Ramadan, they would make many, as much as they can of khatamat of the Quran, to go through the Quran from the beginning to the end, and that's more of the concern than anything else. Should a person memorize, recite, if a person can get all of them, mashallah, this is good. But the more that a person recites, the more it's special for the month of Ramadan. And there's so many narrations from the Sahaba, from the Tabi'een, from the Imam of the Deen. And the more the person is good in the Quran, the more that he can recite without being just, this recitation of very fast recitation, this is not a recommended thing. And some of these recitations is not even valid, because every letter has to be said. And to make this and to make it in a nice way, this is what is best, inshallah ta'ala. But the more the time is occupied with fasting, with reciting the Quran, that's the best action. And then anything else comes in place, dhikr, yes. If there's need for ta'aleem or learning something, this is, mashallah, is good. But many of them would even stay away from durus. Why? Because they're focused on the Quran, like one of which Imam Malik, rahimahullah, he would stop the hadith sessions in Ramadan to be busy with the Quran, but not to stop the durus and then the person is sleeping. if it's because they're busy with something else, which is mainly the Quran. The 10 days, of course, of the last 10 days in i'tikaf, and it has its rulings, and there is Laylatul Qadr, and the importance of it. All of that is to be observed, inshallah ta'ala. So I'll stop here, inshallah, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us benefit from what we heard. And there's more points, of course, to be mentioned. But if you have any questions, we can go through them. I see some questions here. May Allah make it easy. You guys ready? There's so many questions, inshallah. First question. What should a person do if his local masjid do calculations? He should not follow them. If a person's local masjid is going by calculations, he should not follow them in the calculations. He pray with them, mashallah. Salah is valid, but he should not fast with them because of calculations. No, you follow the moon sighting. Calculation is not valid. Right? And it doesn't mean that you have to cause fitna in the masjid. You advise them, give them advice, and if they refuse, then salah is valid, right? Everything is valid, but you don't follow their fasting, meaning if they fast a day earlier or a day later, for example, if the calculation says, say for example, Ramadan is Sunday, and the moon is sighted for Saturday, it's not permissible for you to fast on Sunday and to skip Saturday, because the moon has been sighted. But if the calculation said Saturday and the moon is sighted Saturday, mashallah, then it's okay. And of course, in general, and this is an advice, it's best, as they say, to pray in a masjid that is following the sunnah more without invalidating the salah in other masajid. But it's best for a person to pray in the masjid where it follows the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ.
How do you respond to like people who say if there's a community and they're following like the global sighting, say it was announced from a country that they had sighted the moon, and then some people in the community or some people in this masjid are saying, no, these people are doing calculations. They didn't actually see it. They're just doing calculations, and they're just kind of like saying that they did that. How do you respond? How should one respond to those?
If someone claims or says that those who take the global sighting that they're doing calculation, this is a false accusation, of course. Because what is the meaning of global sighting? Means if, first of all, as we said, the witness of one person is sufficient for people to start the fasting. So if this person, we don't have to see that person, we don't have to interview that person, it's just sufficient for that. So the meaning of global sighting, which is لا عبرة باختلاف المطالع, the moon has many مطالع or doesn't have مطالع. The majority of the ulama, there's no validity to the many different مطالع of the moon, meaning it's the same moon, if it's seen any place, especially if they share part of the night, that means it's mandatory upon everyone to fast, because there's no clear evidence from the Prophet ﷺ that makes that separation of different localities. It's only the hadith of Abdullah ibn Abbas and Qurayb when he fasted in Mecca and the people in Sham fasted a different day, and they came after a few days and he said, "You fasted?" He says, "We fasted because of what we saw, and you fasted." He approved both, which is the evidence that it's okay for people to have differences in days of fasting based on what they've seen. So the global sighting, and again, it's not that it's one correct way in this, because the other ones are valid to do local sighting, but who would determine the local sighting? And I'm saying that practically in a place like here, for example. People there's no religious authority over the people. So it's all masajid, it's all formed committees, right? And if you try to form one committee it's maybe, mashallah, it'd be nice if it happens, but you would find some people say, no, it's only our people. And other people, no, it's a sad reality. So practically, there's no such a thing as, the local sighting that everybody would agree to, because there's no religious authority that would enforce this. So practically, wallahu a'lam, it's to follow if the moon, and this is not just because it's practically, it's jumhur ulama. The majority of the ulama are in the opinion that if the moon is sighted anywhere, then everybody follows that. So since the east the moon is sighted before us. So if someone said it, saw it there, then people to follow that, and that's what is easier, and that's the majority of the ulama. But if someone chooses otherwise, we don't say it's bid'ah, we don't say it's haram, it's valid, it's good, no problem. And it's been the ways of throughout centuries that Muslims are not all fasting at the same time, which is valid because of different places. And if people have a locality where people are upon one thing, and this is their locality and their community, and they go by the actual moon sighting, then they should not go against them. But if they're doing calculation, there's no validity for this. It's just they're making up something. So it's not calculations, it's going with the moon sighting. No. So, is there a criteria to select who you're feeding as a result of breaking the fast because of pregnancy or lactation or any valid excuse? It's feeding poor people. Just the fact that they're poor. Doesn't have to be the exactly ones that are given for zakah. If they're poor, and it has to be food. It's not money to be given to the poor. So, and how much is the food to be given? Whether it's a meal of what a person normally would eat, prepared and it's fixed and would be sufficient for them, or to give grains and something approximately like 2.5 pounds for every day of grains, rice or something like this that can be saved for every day. No, is that?
We have to individually identify, or let's say if we feed 20 and one of them may be poor, or yes.
Right. We don't have to identify everyone, of course. It's sufficient that is, it seems to be this way. And like Anas radiallahu anhu, he used to, when he reached a very old age and he's not able to fast, he would, at the end of Ramadan, he would collect 30 poor people and he would feed them. So it's not interviewing each one. It's usually, especially when there are poor people that are very recognized. With ease, inshallah. Question here, if a female has still fasting to make up from last Ramadan, can she compensate after this Ramadan? The answer is yes. She should still have the days, knowing her days. And if this Ramadan enters and she did not finish the make-up days, then feeding for every day, and then still make up the days afterwards, inshallah. I would love to have coffee. If someone while fasting he says, according to what you said, I love to have coffee now, but he didn't drink the coffee, does he break his fast? Since it's a good question because we didn't go into details of how the niyyah is broken because it's a pillar of fasting. If someone while fasting, he made a decision to break his fast. Not that, I would love to have a cup of coffee now. That's different. If he says it like this, just wishful thinking, that's fine. And he shouldn't, but if he says this, that's fine. But if he made the decision, he's going to break his fast. And it doesn't have to be sinful. He might be traveling, and he was planning to continue fasting, but then he says, no, I'm going to break my fast. And the first coffee shop that comes along, I will stop. He's making that decision to himself. But then kept on delaying, so then he changed his mind. It's too late. He broke his fast when his intentions was that he broke his fast. So he doesn't even have to say anything. But waswas is not to be considered. If he has whispers or going back and forth, if he made the decision, niyyah is a pillar. So if he breaks his intention, that means he broke his fast. But if he says words, just that means, he would love to eat at this moment. Everybody would love to eat and drink, but it doesn't break the fast. Here, let's take one from here. What happens if a person is drinking water or in the process of chewing and the adhan of Fajr comes in? A person, even though there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that whoever has in his hand water and the adhan is called, then he should drink it. This is if it's in one's mouth, right? And the adhan is called, he's not initiating something new, right? He doesn't have to spit it out. He just swallow it. But not to initiate more drinks, then of course that breaks the fast. If a woman in her premenopausal state for a few months. She doesn't get her menses for a period of time, and then some months later she gets her menses, but longer than her usual menses. What is the ruling for her? Does she has to wait for her bleeding to be completely stopped, or she has to count the regular days of her menses and start fasting afterwards? If the days are many days, longer days, but all of these days are very clearly recognizable menses blood. That means she abstained from fasting and salah because this is all blood of menses. As long as it's not 15 days. If it's less than 15 days, then it's all days of al-hayd and menses, and she makes up the day of fasting afterwards. But if she's not able to recognize the differences of blood, then she goes back to her norm where she used to be 6 or 7 days, for example, and anything extra is to be considered as istihada. She would pray for the salah and take a shower and then clean oneself, and to pray for every salah, to make wudu for every salah, and she fasts these days. If there's differences in the blood, but if the blood is the same, then she treats it as menses as long as it's less than 15 days.
Okay, I was just wondering, because you were saying about how like it's like mustahab to eat the suhoor like right before the fajr. Then I was just wondering, like in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and also just in the time of the past in general, how did they know like when exactly was that time and wake up then? And then I just wondering.
How did they know that this is the last part of the night at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, especially when it's very close to Fajr and things like this? It's a claim that it was even clearer than nowadays, because there was not too much lights at night, so it's easily to be recognized from the skies. And also a sarikh, or the rooster, would make their own statements during the night. Like for example, when nowadays they're confused because there's so much lights everywhere. But if you have an environment where it's completely dark during the night, and you have a rooster, a sarikh, this is when the Prophet ﷺ used to wake up at night. Is he makes, what's the voice of the rooster? What is it called in English? What is it? Anyway, what is it? Crow? Oh, okay. So the voice of the rooster exactly in the middle of the night. You can check you set your clock with it. In the middle of the night exactly, he would wake up people. And then, of course, closer to the Fajr. But the exact way, I'm not really sure, but they would know the time of As-Sahar, even as I don't recall exactly, but you would find situations where like Abdullah ibn Umar and others, they would make salah. And then they would ask, is it time for Sahar yet? And they would say, not yet, not yet. Yes, it is. Then they would make istighfar. So that means someone is watching to see when it starts now. Maybe we can check it more, inshallah. طيب, what is the best way to give da'wah during Ramadan when many non-Muslims are asking about Islam, especially for Muslims who feel they don't have a strong foundation in Islamic history, rules, or answers to common questions, considering that da'wah is an obligation for Muslims? Wallahi, the da'wah is da'wah to Rusul, which is the da'wah to at-tawheed. La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. And you don't have to be a philosophy major. You don't have to learn all the doubts and all the answers to the doubts and all of the different intellectual things and reasons and debates. Just to convey the meaning of La ilaha illallah, this is sufficient. If you have the ability to speak to someone. And of course, to have the kindness and the leniency, and to, if there's circumstances where a person can break the unease that people would have not listening, this can be said like this, or to give someone a copy of the translated Quran, for example, or saying that this is the month of Ramadan. The da'wah is, there's no one set way of it. And even when you speak to someone, you don't have to say necessarily like a very specific statements. You can even start with saying in the month of Ramadan, it's a month of compassion and month of goodness, people feed one another, something to get them to see these types of things, inviting them to even the masajid, as long as there's no sins are involved, and for people to organize lectures for them. All of these things are good, mashallah, or people even inviting them at their homes as long as there's no sins and mixing and things of that nature. So it's different from one individual to the other, but yes, it's a great opportunity, especially when the shayateen, the fierce ones, are chained in the month of Ramadan, so it can be an easier one, inshallah. Allah musta'an. Is wearing contact lenses for my vision allowed while fasting? My eyes become dry sometimes and I have to use eye drops. Could I use them as well? Yes, inshallah. And of course it's needed, so you use them, and if anything that even you taste it in your throat, that does not break the fast, inshallah, in this case. Allah. No, any questions before I continue? So there's a question. Can I pray Taraweeh on my own or with my family at home if I am attempting to review my Quran and want to use Taraweeh as a means to review my Quran so that I do not forget, or is it still better to pray in the masjid for Taraweeh? There's Taraweeh or the night prayer, it doesn't have to be in the masjid because it's a recommended thing anyway. It's best to be done in the masjid, as the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, they used to do that. They used to come to the masjid and pray in jama'at. And Umar radiallahu anhu gathered them in Salat Jama'ah. And this, it's kind of one of the ways to guarantee that you made it for that night, because you pray with the Imam till he finishes. So it guarantees, makes it that you're sure that you get this night taken care of. If someone prays at home, mashallah, this is also valid. But only for the intention of reviewing the Quran. That intention, it doesn't have to be that way. And this is something that you would not find from among the early generations of Islam, that they were upon these types of things. This issue of leading Salah in Taraweeh so that you don't forget the Quran is never heard of, except in these days. Meaning, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, when they would have Ubay ibn Ka'b leading the Salah, or this is because he's the one that recites the Quran. There was no competition over this. And the same thing if someone finished the Quran, memorized the Quran. Sometimes people, they have this notion that if he hafid al-Quran, that means what? He has to read Taraweeh. No, they don't go together. Hifd al-Quran, this is ibadah by itself. This is an honor for someone to memorize the Quran. It doesn't mean that he needs to lead somewhere. And actually, it's the opposite of what the sunnah is. A person should not ask to be imam. Whether he asks or his parents ask for him, or they go find a place for him, all of that is not from the sunnah. Actually, a person should stay away from this and should make sure that he does not get himself looking for positions like that. But it's given, then if it's given to him because he fits, then he can accept, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help him. But not the way that things are, and organizing many Taraweeh for the Huffaz to encourage them not to forget. This is not heard of from the early generations of Islam. And we should encourage them by making them having the sincere intentions that they memorize the Quran for the sake of Allah, not for the sake of leading people in the Salah. And the same thing with one's parents. If you say, I have my son memorize the Quran, we can make some rak'at at home to encourage them, to make them more upon the deen. There's no such a thing. This is not something to be done this way. But if it happens to be for them to lead the salah, sure. But not to organize these types of things for their intentions. Or this issue of encouraging the youth and making it part of the ibadah, this is, no, we can encourage them in many different ways. But not in the subject of al-ibadah. Yes, it sounds maybe nice and things like this, but it should not be the case. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy, inshallah. So it's best to be in the masjid, wallahu a'lam. If you make the intention to fast before Fajr and he breaks it, even if he knew that he wasn't going to be able to fast that day. You make intention to fast and he break it, even if he knew. Does anybody understand anything? I'll read it and tell me if you understand, because I don't understand the question. If you make the intention to fast before Fajr, can he break it even if he knew that he wasn't going to be able to fast that day? Okay, again. If you make the intention to fast before Fajr, can he break it even if he knew that he wasn't going to be able to fast that day? I don't understand the question. So maybe make it clear.
If he's saying if you break the intent, if you make the intention before Fajr, and then you break the intention before Fajr again. Then
Okay.
he made the intention
Okay.
at night.
If a person make the intention at night, and then he broke his intention before Fajr, and if he still have a chance to make the intention again, then that's okay. Okay. Right. Okay. If you know that you're going to break your fast during the day, can you still make your intention before Fajr to fast? Yes. Because circumstances can change. Not that you know that you're going to break your fast and you made the decision. Again, it's if you have a plane flight in the middle of the day and you already booked it and you paid and everything, right? Still have the intention that you're fasting because things can happen. Not that you would change anything. If things happens, then you continue fasting and this is fine. Is it better for a woman to pray Taraweeh at home? As a general rule, the best place for women for Salah is at home. Fard and Nafl and everything, the best. But if she wants to go to the masjid, the Prophet ﷺ said, لا تمنعوا إماء الله مساجد الله. Do not prevent the women from the houses of Allah as long as there's no sins involved. And sometimes a woman would need this for her iman, for to get herself away from, to have more khushu' in certain times. But definitely the best place is at home. And if she works and struggle to make her salah at home and to be consistent in this, she will enjoy far more than those who would come to the masjid for sure. But it requires patience with that. But again, it's not a call for someone to not to come to the masjid. No, sometimes it's needed and it makes more encouragement. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it easy for them. Yeah, go ahead.
So, if somebody has like a flight or like is traveling and then they like have to miss Tarawih because of like the flight or something like this, can they still fall under that hadith where like their sins are forgiven?
If someone is traveling and he might miss the Taraweeh because of traveling in the plane and things like this, first, he should do his best, the best he can that he prays also, even if in the plane, so that he doesn't miss the day. And with the Taraweeh prayer, he can pray sitting, no problem. So, and even if he can make it a long salah in the flight so that he does not miss that one night of salah. If not, then may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy, inshallah.
Is it if so? Say if it's during that time, like when the people are normally praying the Tarawih like after Isha, but if he comes back and it's already like midnight by that time, is it fine if he just prays the Tarawih at that time? Like
Yeah, Tarawih doesn't have to be after Salat al-Isha. If a person comes back from traveling midnight, then he makes the salah. So that's the thing is, if a person missed the Tarawih in the masjid, then he should try his best, of course, to pray at home. And if he's able to do it jama'ah at home, mashallah, this is better. If not, pray alone, because the hadith, man qama Ramadan, whoever makes the night prayer in Ramadan. The issue of the masjid is that it guarantees that he gets the day. Doesn't mean that if he prays at home, he doesn't get the day as Qiyamul Layl. He gets it also, but sometimes a person might be lazy, might not do things in the right way. So,
what about the
oh,
sorry,
sorry.
what about the part of the hadith where it's like he's like behind the imam?
Yes.
So does that show that it has to be in
No. It says, Kutibat lahu Qiyamul Layl. Whoever prays behind his imam till he finishes, it will be recorded for him as Qiyamul Layl. So this is the issue of guarantees he gets it. And that's the ease of the jama'ah in the masjid. تفضل. People, when they're gathered because of a disease, someone died, they gather at home and the people would feed them so that they make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy upon the deceased. Is that right? This is bid'ah. This is innovation in the deen. This issue of the yearly memory of the deceased, or after 40 days, or bringing people to feed them even after a person died, for them to make dua. All of that is innovations in the deen. People died at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and there was no such a thing whatsoever. And what's best is for people to make dua. If they want to give charity on behalf of the dead, that's fine. but not to make it as a ritual thing. Whether it's giving people money with the intention of charity on behalf of the deceased, this is valid, or to feed people as a charitable thing with the intention to be on behalf of the deceased, this is all good. But this issue of ritualizing things, on a specific day, people get together, and the same thing even when people do things on the internet or messages. Today's his father died 1 year ago. Don't forget my father from your dua. What does that mean? A year ago, it doesn't mean anything. There's no birthdays or death days or these things people do all the time, also online and things. This is actually part of the al-jafa, or being not kind to the deceased. That we only wait for the year to pass for us to remember them. You know, if you're able to remember your mother and father with every sujood, with every dua, you should always make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for them, instead of these yearly and these types of things. What is the ideal daily schedule in Ramadan? When should one sleep and how often should one sleep? When should one work? When should one do ibadah? MashaAllah. Of course, this is different from one person to the other, but very briefly, in Ramadan, the most important thing is the obligations. So for men to pray every salah in the masjid, this is what is best if they're close to the masjid. This is more important than Taraweeh prayer. So praying Salatul Dhuhr in the masjid is more rewardable, more important than praying Taraweeh in the masjid. And it doesn't mean that way that means a person does not pray Taraweeh. But sometimes people would find them praying Taraweeh, but they are at home and they're close to the masjid and they don't come for Dhuhr and Asr. Or you find, assuming that in Dhuhr people are at work, so that's why there are less people in the masjid. But for the sake of arguments, if people are all not working and they are present close to the masjid, the fact that they would come for Taraweeh more and not for Dhuhr and Asr, there's something wrong here. So to make sure that the obligations are done perfectly on time, with the Sunnah prayer and the Taraweeh prayer to be observed, and fasting, you have time for reciting the Quran as much as a person can. And the month of Ramadan doesn't have to be the month where you take vacation. There's no such a thing. You can still work, but to organize the time. If a person is able to take off the last 10 days, this is better, in which a person would seclude himself in ibadah, and to have the ease of spending more hours during the night. More hours during the night for the Quran is something to be stressed in the month of Ramadan. So it's a month where you don't have the norm of what you do throughout the year. And it's important to change sometimes the norm, occasionally, like one of which is the month of Ramadan, which shows the ubudiyah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Allah, make it easy, inshallah. Some people don't do relations during the night of Ramadan. Is this incorrect? Yes, this is incorrect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permitted it during the night of Ramadan, except the last 10 nights of Ramadan if a person is making i'tikaf. And the ayah is clear about this. What should I do if I have many fasts to make up for 5-6 years because of multiple pregnancies? I've tried to make up some of the fasts, but still have many left. I did not pay fidya for any of the prior years. Do I need to calculate and pay fidya for all of the years that these fasts have stayed with me? Yes, that's the first thing to do, is to make sure that you pay the fidya. And paying, that means you feed the poor people with every day you missed. Or if you missed it because of the child, then it's your husband or the one that is the guardian of the child is to give that money. If that is taken care of, then to be at ease with oneself in making up the days. And if someone died before finishing these days, especially with pregnancy and breastfeeding, there's no harm, inshallah ta'ala, because again the matter is of a difference of opinion, but to count them, to make sure that you are on the safe side, to make sure that you fast them whenever you have the means. Winter time, the days are short, things like this. But the fidya is important and should be done. Niyyah of Shawwal fast, can it be done before the fard, the make-up fast, or can we make niyyah for fard and Shawwal? If the fard, to make up the days of fard in Shawwal, would be only counted days and a person would do them and then do the 6 days of Shawwal, this is what is best. If the fard, the days are so many days and a person would either has to be making up the fard or fasting the 6 days of Shawwal, there's no harm if a person fasts the 6 days of Shawwal, and the evidence of that is the actions of Aisha radiallahu anha. she would delay the fard till the month of Sha'ban. And some said it's best to do the fard because that's fard. And which is in principle, in general, yes, the fard should be taken care of first. So if a person is busy during Shawwal making up the fard, and as a result of that he missed the days of Shawwal, it's better for him that way. But is it permissible to delay? Yes, it's permissible to make the days of Shawwal. I hope it's clear. Can you repeat the different levels of sickness? Sickness. We said there is the sickness of, yes, whether it's the person is sick, if he fasts, it delays the cure, or the other case, if it harms the person if he fasts because he's sick. So these are two valid reasons for a person to break his fast. So he might be feeling okay, he can fast, but according to the trustworthy doctor, they say that if you fast, it would delay your cure. Then it's best not to fast. It's not about just feeling that a person is feeling good. What if you forget the niyyah, but you know you're supposed to fast? Because it's Ramadan, is your fast still counted? That's niyyah. If you know that you are in Ramadan, that's your intention. You don't have to remember a niyyah. The niyyah is that you're awake during the night of Ramadan. And if someone asks you, what is tomorrow? You say Ramadan. So it means you're having the intention to fast. Unless you're planning to travel this and that, or you're already traveling and you have no plans to fast, this is where you need to make the decision whether you're going to fast or not. But there's no such a thing as, making a decision or saying something, because the niyyah is in the heart. If a woman missed her fasts of previous Ramadan because of pregnancies and nursing, does she have to make up for those missed days of fasting, or she can give fidya? So we answered that one. And again, keep them on the side, inshallah, the days, and do the best you can to make up these days, inshallah. And the fidya is a must. Just to clarify, one witness is sufficient for the beginning of the month. For the end of the month, to not fast, 2 witnesses is needed. Does it matter if it's a man or woman? Yes, it has to be 1 in the beginning, 2 at the end. Doesn't have to be men, can be men or women. If the mother doesn't work, has some money that was given to her last year, and she kept them till this year, and her savings is about 200, is she responsible to pay zakah? 200 is below the nisab, that's for sure, even with according to the silver. So there's no zakah on her if whatever a year passed on, it went down to 200, that means it doesn't count as nisab in this case. So there's no zakah upon her. Does a woman get the reward of qiyam in the masjid? Inshallah, yes, as long as, try our best, no sins and no mixing and things of that nature. Yes, inshallah. And if she prays at home, also this is good. To get the reward of qiyam, does one need to go every day? To get the reward of qiyam, a person has to make qiyam every day. To make sure that it's given as a way to be easy for the person is to pray with the imam till he finishes. So even in case someone came and he prayed for 4 rak'ah and he had to go, right? And he prays the rest at home. Does that mean that he missed the night prayer? Of course not. But it's not a good sign, that's all, as far as the reward is concerned. But it's valid for a person to do that and to do it at home also. If I'm traveling and have the ability to fast in Ramadan, is it better to take the rukhsah of breaking my fast, or is it better to fast because it's the month of Ramadan and the honor given to it? What is best, or according to the sunnah, is what makes it easy for the traveler. If it's easier to fast, fast. If it's easier not to fast, don't fast. So whatever is easier for the person. And in some situations where sometimes you might be given a lesson to someone, like as someone mentioned, Shaykh Ibn Baz rahimahullah, being in a plane and before Maghrib, and it was very short time before Maghrib, like not too long, after Asr, and he asked for water and he drank water. He broke his fast because he's traveling. He said, "Laysa min al-birr as-siyam fi as-safar." It's not from the righteousness to fast and traveling. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala love for the person to take the rukhsah. Someone rarely travels, for example, right? And he's been fasting every day. To take the rukhsah is a good thing once in a while, and there's no tricks or anything like this. So it depends on the circumstance. But what's easier for the person is to be done.
What if someone travels more frequently, let's say half of the month?
If someone travels frequently, like half of the month, as far as if he's a traveler, he has the excuse. But then he has to make up the days. So sometimes it's easier to fast. So it's easier than making up the days is to fast. But he can break the fast sometimes and not to, but he has to make sure that he makes up the days right away afterwards. Preferable if it's easier for him. But traveling is an excuse. No.
Does somebody have to specifically pray inside or outside Ramadan? Like they have to pray like the night prayer up to like 8 or 11 rak'ah for it to be one counted as one qiyamul layl
No.
reward or no?
Right. Does it count as a one night prayer if it has to be 11 in Ramadan or other than Ramadan to be counted as one night prayer? The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ about Ramadan, because of the hadith man qama Ramadan. So whoever prays the night prayer in Ramadan. So to make sure that that is done is to pray till the Imam finishes, which is 11 rak'ah at least. Other than Ramadan, if a person prays 2 rak'ah, 4 rak'ah, 6 rak'ah, whatever, with the witr, he's making night prayer. But the perfect numbers is 11. This is the way the Prophet ﷺ in Ramadan, other than Ramadan. Two more questions left here. During the last 10 nights of Ramadan, do I still get the full reward of Qiyam the whole night if I only pray the full Taraweeh with the Imam until he finishes without doing Tahajjud, or do I have to complete my Tahajjud as well? There's difference between getting the reward of a full night Qiyam and getting more and more rewards for more ibadah, and especially with Laylatul Qadr, seeking Laylatul Qadr. This is another level in which it's only 10 days a person should do the best they can, because it's equal to 80 years of worship. So not to waste it whatsoever. But even from that perspective, praying Isha in Jama'ah and praying Fajr in Jama'ah. If you pray Isha in Jama'ah as if you prayed half of the night, as the Prophet ﷺ said. And if you prayed Fajr in Jama'ah as if you prayed the whole night in rewards. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful, and that's why, something like this is also for people to be reminded. But as far as the tahajjud, I'm not talking about the tahajjud of the salah only. The effort that a person would do, these are all levels, and this is a competition. And if a person is able that no one would beat him in the acts of worship, he should. So that's why a person should do the best they can, to the best of the ability, because it's endless rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If someone feeding poor people because of qada, do they have to be Muslim, fasting person, or any poor person? Has to be a Muslim. And of course, not someone that is to make them break the fast in the day of Ramadan, for example, to help them commit sins. So if they are being fed in Ramadan, then it's to be breaking their fast or something like this. But it has to be Muslims, not anyone. If I fast like Monday, Thursday with the niyyah of nafl, and I remember I have fasts to make up for a few years ago from Ramadan, can I assume that those nafl covered it, or I must do more fast with the niyyah of replacing those missed days? If it's in the past, no, you have to have the intention that this is for the fard that you missed. You can continue to fast Mondays and Thursdays, but with the intention during the night that this is for making up the days of Ramadan. The fard has to have a special intention for it. There's no more questions here. Any more questions? طيب, barakallahu fikum, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept and make it easy for us, and to make us all witness the month of Ramadan, inshallah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم ربنا وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.